The island, the map where it all began. From serene beaches to bone-chilling cold, it served as the birthplace for our first survivors when we embarked on our journey to explore the Ark. Today marks the start of my month-long expedition, reliving nostalgia as I delve into week 1. I deeply appreciate your unwavering support, and I can't wait for you to enjoy the entire series. So let's commence this adventure together. We woke up barely butt naked on the beach with a few dragonflies flying over our body. Luckily, they wasn't attacking us, so we quickly got to work collecting stone, wood, berries, and fiber from all around us. Luckily for us, we found this moss shop that wanted miho berries, so I tamed it, boosting our berry and fiber gathering tenfold. We also found these dodos getting attacked on the shoreline, so we saved them. And then we killed the dodos. Afterwards, we leveled up our moss chops and then went back to gathering resources. We made thatch building items and created our first base. After I was done, I randomly tamed a ꜱᴏᴄ out of nowhere, which I still have no clue how that happened. The next step was stone, so we traveled to mine some rocks and killed a ꜱᴏᴘᴏ on our way. We were sorely surprised by a raptor, which looked like it was coming after us, so we ran away, which seemed to work out because we found rocks anyways on the way that we were running, and we just mined those instead. Once done, we went back home and learned all of these engrams. I placed a bunch of large storage boxes in the base and went to go mine more stone. This time, my hatchet broke, so we made a new one and continued beating this rock. We went home, crafted a forge, placed it in the corner, and now I wanted flint and metal, so we beat up stone with a pickaxe this time when I noticed a cardinal right in front of me, so we ran away. We smelted the metal and looked for a new location to beat rocks since that one had a cardinal. On our way, we found this ꜱᴏᴘᴘᴏ, which I then killed and harvested its metal and smelted it. I also placed down a campfire for food, but I needed a smithy, so I crafted one, along with a motor and pencil. I placed them down, moved all our resources into the smithy, and crafted up a new shiny metal pickaxe, along with a few bolas. And randomly, my moss chops died to the ꜱᴏᴘᴘᴏ. I was terrified because I could be next, so for the rest of the night, I made some narcotics and a metal hatchet. When the morning came, I did not want to stand outside, but I did anyways, so I could look out for the ☱. I couldn't find it anywhere until I spotted it behind me on the shore. I went around it and found my dead buddy on the ground. I took the resources that he had and went on to search to tame a new moss chops. Instead, I actually found this ꜱᴏᴘᴘᴏ, and I bolted it. Shot it a few times, but I wasn't fast enough and he started to run away. Gladly, I shot it enough where he would knock out, but he was in the water, and I thought he was drowning. However, his oxygen wasn't going down, so I figured everything was fine. Shortly after he was tamed, we ran into the sunset together. We went to the swamp area, and we found a new moss chop. We tamed it with wildflowers, and with our new tame, we went on to beat on some more stone. After our mining session, we created our very first basic trap to use for the taming of medium dinosaurs. I then bolted a pterodon and knocked it out. Shortly, I found a higher level one and pretty much did the same thing. I placed down an Excalibur table so I can make myself super narcotics. I want to get inside of dino stores, so I hopped on my new pterodon and went to the top of the mountain to find some crystal. Once I mined the crystal, I crafted up some soul balls and flew further down so I could get a little bit more metal. We went back home, smelted the metal, and crafted up some binoculars to look at all the local dinosaurs, and we also made a crossbow and a sickle. It was now time to use the trap from earlier, so I aggroed on a ꜱᴏᴘᴘᴏ and led him into my trap. Crafted up some super narcotics and used super arrows to take it down. Shot it a couple of times, and soon enough, he was knocked out. While I waited for him to tame, I wanted to make a fabricator, so I bolted and tamed another ꜱᴗᴘᴘ. Brought him home just in time to give the ꜱᴏᴘᴘᴘ some narcotics so he wouldn't wake up. However, I did want to find a female ꜱᴗᴘᴘ for our metal farm, so I flew almost everywhere for hours and I couldn't find one until I got lucky and spotted one on the shoreline of the beach. So I bolted it, knocked it out, tamed it, and started breeding it with my male ꜱᴗᴘᴘ back at the base. Now the only thing I needed was spark powder and cementing paste for the fabricator, so I went to go beat on more stone. Made some spark powder, went to the mountains to get some obsidian, which I was going to need for polymorph once we had the fabricator. I went back home, made my first set of armor, and finally, we had the fabricator. Once I placed it down, I made me some polymorph, and I crafted the solar gun. Now it was time for us to get a Ʇᴏᴘᴘᴘ. I made some super narco arrows and headed up to the mountains to tame one. Found a Ʇᴏᴘᴘᴘ, knocked it out, tamed it, and shot him with my soul gun. Once we went back home, I placed standing torches for the parasaur eggs to hatch because we still needed more females. While we were waiting, I scoped out the area that I wanted to move the base to. I spent enough time for the eggs to hatch when I came back home. Unfortunately, they were all male, so I told my ☱ᴏᴄɪᴜᴚ to kill them all, which gave me a few resources to craft the ☱ᴏᴄɪᴜᴚ saddle. Now that we had the Ʇᴏᴜᴘᴘᴏ, we needed an 꽱ᴏᴜᴘᴏ, so we went up to the mountain, spotted this level 136 ☱ᴏᴜᴘᴏ with 27 base weight. While I was waiting for him to tame, I decided to have a little bit of fun on my Ʇᴏᴜᴘᴘ and beat up some rocks. I decided to do this at night as well, which was a bad idea because I became under attack by Troodons. I had my ☱ᴜᴘᴘᴏ with me, but it looked like he needed some help, so I hopped off my Ʇᴜᴘᴘ and decided to take control. I killed all the Troodons, but I got knocked out in the process. When I woke up, I went home to make an 꽱ᴜᴘᴘᴏ saddle. However, I was short on chitin, so I roamed the beaches with my ☱ᴜᴘᴘᴏ to farm some from the beach roaches. I got enough to make the 꽱ᴜᴘᴘᴏ saddle, headed back and equipped it with my RG. Now, I can try out the new diving with the RG. You guys have to try this. It's just amazing. And on top of that, we got the most overpowered dino combination in ARK history. Now it was time to make a meat spoiler, so I made a meat spoiler. I need a meat spoiler because it spoils meat instantly, which is good for narcotics. And I needed a lot of meat, so I killed this guy and he gave me a lot of meat. With the meat, I made a bunch of narcotics and super arrows for the Brontosaurus. And there it is, the Brontosaurus of choice. I ended up shooting it a bunch of times and it went to sleep. While I waited for it to tame, I decided to head over to the snow area to tame a penguin for organic polymorph. On our way there, a titan spawned right in front of me, which is pretty crazy. It's never happened like that before. When I got to the penguins, I shot the first female and male that I saw and knocked them both out. While I was here, I was quickly losing health. Thankfully, the low level penguin came right up, but the higher level penguin was taking too long, so I decided to leave. But as soon as I got into the air, he was tamed. So I picked it up and barely made it out alive. I decided to go back home and my Brontosaurus was ready. When I got home, I took the penguins out and set them to breeding. Headed over to the Brontosaurus and picked them up. Now it was time to tame a scorpion for our source of chitin. So we got some super arrows and headed over to Death Island and found these scorpions just chilling. I knocked one of them out, headed back home, and waited for it to tame. While at the house, we got triplets from a parasaur egg and ended up getting 3 females, which is the exact amount I needed to start the farm. So we crafted up the building materials for the farm and started building it. Once the scaffolding was in place, it was time for the penguins and the parasaurs. Finally, we bring it all down. Once done, I gave it a few minutes for them to spawn and decided to test it out. Turns out penguins don't like combat, so they just fled as soon as I started hitting the babies. So I picked up all the penguins and decided to just save them until later. I went back to Death Island to tame ourselves a Rex. While I was there, I spotted this level 148 Alpha Rex, which looked insane. I also spotted this level 112 Rex and decided to shoot it a few times. I ended up running out of arrows, but I had just enough to knock it out, so I gave it some meat and went back home. Since my penguins were far from the trap, I wanted to test and see if they would run if I attacked the baby parasaurs. Turns out they didn't, so I figure it's just a distance thing that I have to watch out for. I went back to Death Island to pick up our Rex and to find a female scorpion for our chitin farm. I found one and knocked it out. While we waited for it to tame, I went to where our new base location would be and placed down the Rex along with the Brontosaurus so I could clear out the area, and then made a few metal foundations along with the bulk crafting station to create some bulk storage for our items. I went back to our old base and collected all the items and the dinosaurs. Before going back home, I stopped by Death Island to pick up our scorpion that we knocked out earlier, and then we headed back home. From the resources, I crafted a bunch of the stone foundations along with everything else I would need to make a new trap for the dinosaurs and then got to building. We quickly finished and had a nice flooring with the scaffolding for the parasaurs and the penguins. I placed down railings at the bottom so they wouldn't get out, along with picking up all the foundations in the middle so they wouldn't get stuck in them. Finally, for the test. And it failed. All the penguins fell. I was sad, so I thought of a new design, and I tested it to see if parasaurs could walk between 2 pillars. Turns out, they can't. So I picked up all the railings and replaced them with pillars. I placed down fence foundations between the pillars so I could place railings between them. I also lowered the foundations so I could place a double door frame and then fill the area back up with foundations. placed down a fabricator, and tested the trap once again. Seems like everything is working perfectly fine and the parasaurs cannot get out. The only thing is I have to now include the penguins. So I built up pillars higher than the parasaurs and placed a ceiling right in the middle of the farm. I placed down the penguins, removed the ceiling, and they were floating. This was the final result. I placed down my 2 scorpions so I could start them breeding and we can prepare to make the farm for them. I placed down a few forges so we can mass smelt metal, and I went higher above the penguins for the scorpions. Placed down all the scaffolding, and when I went to place the scorpions, this happened. Not sure why, but getting on it and moving it just seems to fix it. Afterwards, I got all the scorpions in place and it was time to bring it all down. I love this part. And this was the finished product. While collecting the smelted metal, I was attacked by a Rex. Unfortunately, he did do damage to my crafters, but he didn't do anything crazy and we pretty much took him down with ease. Next, that was to craft the big bad forge. So we farmed the babies, waited for them to spawn, and repeated this a bunch of times until we finally was able to craft the forge. We demolished all the smelters and placed the forge right in their wake, smelted up some metal, and made some gasoline, and since we were in the metal business, I replaced the floor with metal because it just looks better. I also placed these storage boxes next to the crafters because I thought it looked pretty cool. The next step is the crafting of the chemistry station. But that is a story for next time. And that, my friends, is the end of week 1. Check back next week as we continue our adventure, expand upon our base, and get into some craziness together. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you next time.